Hey, good morning. Today we're going to take a trip out to Death Valley. It's about 120 miles west of Las Vegas, south and west. And we're going to go explore two different canyons. I'll be out there for more than one day. One canyon is known as Queen of Sheba, and the other is known as Galena Canyon. We'll go check those out. I'll look at some mine sites up there. And we'll go do some video shoots and check it out. So got coffee for this morning's ride. I don't know what I'm going to do for tomorrow's camp coffee. I guess I will have to try to figure something out. This is us just riding along on the west side road in Death Valley. It's only just to give you an idea what it's like out there in the beauty and the backdrop of the Telescope Peak. Stark in appearance and haunting in name, Death Valley is very much alive desert set between high snow-capped mountains. America's lowest, hottest, and driest national park. Here we are at some of the springs along the west side road here at Death Valley. Perfect spring day. You can see how green the vegetation has become. This area where I'm standing at right now, in some topographical maps, is referred to as salt well. Those tanks that are directly behind me were associated with a mining operation nearby. I don't know the exact dates of when these tanks were constructed, but I was reading an asset report dated in 1948 where it stated that the Queen of Sheba Mine owns these tanks. It also talks about water was pumped from the salt well tanks 4 miles to the west against an 1,150-foot hydraulic head. As you can see, everything on this tank is bolted, and probably the most practical reason for that would be is so that they can haul it out to this site in pieces and then bolt it together here on site. Way up in those hills, you can kind of see the road from here. That goes up to an area called Queen of Sheba. There's some mines up in there. We're going to go check that out. Thought I'd give you an indication of how washed out this road is. It looks nice and straight at the beginning, and then we go up through these alluvial fans and just nothing but nasty rocks and washouts all the way up. It's quite an interesting ride that took a long time. Here are some of the pipes that I ran across. Most likely those are the ones that they used to pump the water from those wells down below up to the mine site. A few random photos of the flowers that I saw along the road as well. And the final approach to the site. Can't wait to get out and start exploring. And way out in the distance at the bottom of the valley there, you can see where we started out from. That area down there is Badwater. Lowest point in the U.S. here in Death Valley. I am standing right now at the Queen of Sheba Mine and the mill site. You can see some of the ruins behind me. But the original discovery and claims was actually located on that hill behind me. You heard me make mention of two mines on this immediate site. One was called the Carbonate Mine, which is the earlier of the two discoveries on this site. In the summer of 1907, when Clarence E. Eddy was exploring the southwest slopes of Death Valley, he and some associates began to develop a certain large galena outcrop about 1 mile from what later would become a town site of Carbonate. News of the strike attracted other prospectors to the scene. Among those were Frank Stockton and a mining engineer named Chester A. Prey, who located the Carbonate Mine in 1908. The town and camp of Carbonate sprang up as a result of the interest in the Carbonate Mine. The Carbonate Lead Mines Company of Death Valley was formed by Ed Chafee and Jack Salisbury, whose general offices were located in Manhattan, Nevada. As with so many mines of this area and the era, the biggest hindrance to development was the lack of transportation to railheads. This mine, in particular, was located about 40 miles from the Tonopah Tidewater Railroad Station at Zabriskie. So the enterprising Salisbury proceeded to build a wagon road from the salt wells over the Black Mountains to the railroad, enabling the ore to be hauled by freight teams about 30 miles across Death Valley to the Amargosa Range, where a gasoline tractor hauled it the last 16 miles to town of Zabriskie. This is also along the same route followed by today's Salisbury Pass Road, or known as State Highway 178. It was calculated that with this system, 10 carloads of ore a week could be sent from the railhead at Zabriskie to Salt Lake City for smelting. 40 to 50 head of horses and mules were acquired at first, working as 4 10-animal teams. There were plans to acquire 200 more animals and create more teams from there. However, the capacity constraint was at the tractor. By late fall of 1913, only 2 carloads of ore from the mine had left the Zabriskie station. But further development work was to be carried on throughout the winter months by an increased force of men at the mine. By 1914, the camp at Carbonate was being referred to as the latest sensation of the western mining world, and the presence of extensive nearby deposits of lead, silver, gold, and copper seemed to promise another desert bonanza. The nearby camp was said to be a typical desert boomtown, constructed with tents, rocks, tin cans, dry goods, boxes, whiskey bottles, and anything that came in handy. Water for the domestic use was hauled in from Zabriskie, some 45 miles away to the east. The problem with transportation from the mine site still needed to be solved, and nothing short of construction of a railroad to that site can answer the purpose for hauling the ores to market. The traction engine that was supposed to work such wonders has not delivered the tonnage which was relied upon to make the investment on the mines profitable. By this time, there had been motor trucks that were sent out to the route, and 4 months later, Salisbury's transportation fleet had been increased to 16 large trucks that carried ore daily from the Carbonate Mine to Zabriskie. By 1914, Zabriskie was teeming with activity. 15 mines were operating in the vicinity, and they were using the little railroad station as their supply point. Zabriskie was a rail stop between Toccopa and Shoshone on the Tonopah and Tidewater Railroad. I looked around the area, as all I saw was a bunch of cans and trash debris from that location. You can see scraps of wood, things like that, but nothing of any real significance at that site. It was kind of hard to identify in the field. This right here appears to be the rail bed for the Tonopah Tidewater Railroad. We're looking kind of southerly towards Toccopa here, and I'm standing at what once was Zabriskie. The Tonopah Tidewater Railroad really saw a decrease in freight in the 1920s and suffered a slow death throughout the 1930s, and the rails were dismantled for scrap for the war effort in 1942. Zabriskie was pretty much abandoned by the 1920s, and some of the buildings were moved from there over to Shoshone. You can see what's left of the ore bins that were adjacent to the railroad right here at Zabriskie. That white stuff was probably talc, and the other was probably silver and maybe lead that was from mines in the area. In the meantime, let's head back up to the Queen of Sheba mine site and do some more exploration. I wanted to give an overview to the Queen of Sheba mine and milling site. You can see it was quite an extensive operation at this location, and a lot of these structures were built in the 1930s and 40s. A modest cabin sitting right here, shelter of some sort. Let's take a wander inside and see what's going on. A lot of holes in it, as you can see. Probably not much in the way of protection from the wind. Cast iron pan. A couple bed frames. Some people left some things here. Looks like some spices inside that container right there. Stove. Here's another cabin. We'll go check it out. This cabin's a little more fancy. It's got a separate room for perhaps what was maybe even a shower, a sink. So you have some running water up here. Actually, two sinks. So maybe this was where the miners got cleaned up after a long day of work. Yeah, these look like they were shower stalls. This is a photo of the ruins near the ore pits and that metal structure out there. Photo taken from 1978. And here is the metal building today. As you can see, it's completely collapsed. Just to give you a comparison of what's out there today. Another photo from 1978. You can see again the ore bins and the metal building there. This is a similar picture from the similar angle of what's there today. See a conveyor system right there. The rollers for a conveyor belt. I'm not really sure what this is, but it's a fantastically crude looking piece of equipment. Almost looks like it has a screen down there in the bottom. And it's a big piece of iron. And it's got some mechanical wheels. You can see right there it's got a counterweight and a cam and some connecting rods. A lot of this mining equipment was very crude but very ingenious at the same time. So it's fascinating to look at it. There's a big gear and a big wheel. Looks like it had maybe several belts attached to it. From 1915 to 1918, the Carbonate Mine produced about 11,000 tons of ore, averaging 15% lead and 5 ounces of silver per ton. By 1920, the operation was reported to be idle, although one reference during this time period mentions the Caterpillar Road to the Carbonate Mine as being a good one, which tends to indicate that the mine was active sporadically. The Carbonate Mine was again mentioned in 1923, which leads us to believe that it was still producing. The Queen of Sheba Mine was founded a little bit later than the original Carbonate Mine. The exact date of the opening of the Queen of Sheba Mine is not known for certain, but there is mention of it in some of the newspapers that appears in 1924. In 1926, there were some very promising veins that were discovered uphill from the original Queen of Sheba Mine. The mining engineer's studies were expected to show that the Queen of Sheba silver lead deposit was one of the most extensive in the United States. The Inyo Independent newspaper wrote an article in April of 1926 that stated the reserves already blocked out were estimated at between $1 and $1.5 million in value. Although most of the work was now focusing primarily on the Queen of Sheba, they were also actively working the claims of Carbonate Mine. From 1930 to 1931, around 3,400 tons of ore was mined from the Carbonate Mine, but from 32 to 35, production dropped significantly to less than 1,000 tons. By 1936, the Queen of Sheba was listed as the only important property at the Carbonate Mines. In 1938, it was reported that the Queen of Sheba was still hauling ore by truck to Zabriskie for shipment to the Salt Lake smelters. Reporting on the progress of the mines was very sketchy after 1938 and really didn't see much as far as work goes until it was resumed in 1944. The Carbonate Mine was reopened in 1948. During the 47 and 48, a long-awaited flotation mill was built over at the Queen of Sheba sites. Several hundred tons of ore were mined and milled by the New Sutherland Company from 1948 to 1949. Mining operations finally ceased in the mid-1949. Over the lifetime of Queen of Sheba, the total production is reported to have been 16,000 tons of crude ore, yielding 5 million pounds of lead, 100,000 ounces of silver, 1,500 ounces of gold, and 146,000 pounds of copper, with an estimated value of $300,000, equating to almost 5 million in today's dollars. Well, this concludes my presentation of another beautiful area in Death Valley, the mines of Carbonate and Queen of Sheba. Hope you enjoyed. Death Valley, what a wonderful place, especially this time of the year. It's known as land of the extremes. Extreme heat, extreme low elevation at minus 285 below sea level, and a high elevation above 11,000 at Telescope Peak. This particular mine I went to, the Carbonate and the Queen of Sheba, were silver mines. They were the most successful silver mines in Death Valley, although by comparison to other silver mines, they are not that successful. But I thoroughly enjoyed the discovery and the walking around that area. And for those that can't make it out there anymore, I hope you enjoy these videos. And if you like them and the content, please hit the subscribe button. Doesn't cost anything to view them. I hope you enjoyed this. Thanks for watching.